Sometimes the worst of situations can bring about the best innovations and improvements to prevent future tragedies.
This is the case with a company that started out to build a shelter seniors could use. But as Fox 25's Phil Cross shows us, national tragedies, including Oklahoma's devastating spring storms, changed the course of a revolutionary new product. Phil.
Guys, we're talking about a storm shelter, but this is no ordinary hole in the ground or reinforced rooms, and it can save space while saving lives. At the Staying Home Corporation factory in Harrisonville, Missouri, they're doing something no one has ever done before.
Just the physics and the engineering around that design was really the toughest part by far.
It began as an idea to make it easier for the elderly to get into a storm shelter in their home. And that led to concerns about where to store such a shelter.
We developed a storm shelter that could actually be folded up in a home when it's not being used and then deployed when you needed it.
You heard that right. It's a collapsible storm shelter. You might be thinking a storm shelter that collapses is the last thing anyone would want, but you might be surprised.
The purpose of the shelter is not to be frail in any means. In fact, it's some of the heaviest material used in the shelter made anywhere in the country.
The Hideaway shelter takes up just 17 inches away from the wall when it's folded up. And when danger is near, it deploys in seconds.
You can see we just pulled out roughly 1,500 pounds, and it took about 20 pounds of pressure to do that.
So it pops out, but what can it take? Turns out this is the shelter that took it all. Here at the National Wind Institute on the Texas Tech University campus in Lubbock.
We can analyze numerically for wind pressures, but we have to full-scale test for debris impacts. Clear?
Larry Tanner is the manager of the debris impact facility.
This is a glorified potato gun on steroids.
This is where any shelter that wants to prove it can take a storm's wrath comes to prove its mettle. Tanner and his team do what they can to destroy the shelters.
It's been told about for too many years that the only safe place is underground. And quite truthfully, that is just false.
The Hideaway shelter took multiple hits. This was actually the second prototype to go through the testing. The first attempt failed, but this design stood up to the beating. Tanner says any shelter that passes his test will survive the worst storms and can qualify for any shelter grant program offered.
It means that, number one, the customer knows that he's got a safe product. It's been through a very rigorous test.
But debris impact isn't the only test this shelter passed. During development, the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary happened, and Vogt realized he could do something even more with his shelter, something no one has done before for a fraction of the cost.
It's the same steel they use to go underneath the Hummers to protect them from IEDs.
The Hideaway shelter became a way to protect against armed intruders in businesses, homes, and most importantly, schools.
We use a steel that stops a .30 caliber armor-piercing round, which is a level 9 ballistic rating, and it's as high as any safe room that we know that exists anywhere in the U.S. today.
So where are these shelters? Well, it turns out not everyone thinks that the deployable storm shelters are a good fit, and it's upsetting some parents in Moore who say they want to pay to bring these very shelters to their school, but they say the district has told them no. Coming up at 9:30, we'll explain why Moore says it is willing to pay millions more and wait years longer for shelters that won't provide the same protection. Reporting in the newsroom, Phil Cross, Fox 25 News.